We're going to be talking today about Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David, a very interesting person. He comes from Iran, was there during the war as a child, moved to America, and is now an entrepreneur, very successful person, wrote this book, very successfully wrote this book. So he won't be joining us today, unfortunately, but we will be talking about the key merits of the book. As I mentioned before to some of the people earlier on the call, we have been taking a view of the PMI talent triangle, and this last period we've been covering business acumen. And for us, this book falls into business acumen in a big way. It really helps you to think about who you are, what you want, and how you get it. I mean, that's the most basic way I can say it. And I think it's a very engaging book too. It gives lots of examples. And I will talk about some of those examples briefly today. But most of all, I'd like you to engage. So if you want to say something or have a question, please react or put a comment in the chat, and Richa and Shavian will tell us what the questions are because I can't see them. So just feel free to chime in if there's something you want to ask, or you want to add to the conversation, or you want to disagree with something my takeaways. That's all key too. We're all here to learn. And what I really like about this particular book is it's about mindset. It's about having a winning mindset, but he also takes the strategy approach, which I think is really good because it's more than just having a mindset. It's what do you do with it once you've had that mindset. He also gives practical and action-oriented frameworks. I haven't really given a lot of detail on those today, but they are in the book. And I think it appeals to everyone. One of the things I would like to say as a caveat is this conversation's mostly linked to being a manager or a leader or an entrepreneur, which he talks about a lot, or an entrepreneur, so a startup kind of business situation. But he also frames this book very importantly to not everybody wants to make $1 million. Not everybody wants to be Elon Musk. It's okay. And if you're being your true self, then you're successful at it. So this isn't just for the A-type high performers, people with the idea of, I want to be a billionaire. It really is a book that can just help you be the person you want to be. And I like that. So what are the 5 moves that these next 5 moves relate to? These are them: mastering yourself, the ability to reason, the right team, strategy to scale. I think that one was really resonant with me, and power plays. And then he goes into subcomponents of each of those, which I'm going to really kind of highlight today. But one of the things is, what are these moves he's talking about? And in his book, he talks about, I can't remember the guy, but he's the world champion chess master. And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, but this is a picture of him. And this idea of moves are moves on chess pieces, moves on a chessboard. And he talks about the fact that these chess masters in interviews talk about the fact that they are often 12 moves ahead. I can't think of this guy's name. He's just completely come out of my mind. But anyway, this particular person whose photo was on the screen talks about this idea he looks 12 moves ahead. He also interviewed some people like Michael Jordan, who talked about, I'm at least 5 moves ahead, and that being a really important part of his overall career. So he says, if we can just be 5 moves ahead, we can be that much more successful. So without further ado, I'm just going to drop into these detailed summaries, which is, what is mastering knowing yourself? And he said, when I talk to someone who wants to get input from me, maybe it's a new student, a student graduating from university or someone else, I ask them, who do you want to be? What's your ideal situation? And you don't know where you can go, which I, in my personal life, also have found to be true. And then I really like how he simplifies it. He says, without this kind of clarity, you're maybe doing a job that doesn't really align to your values, or doing work you don't love, or having problems making decisions because you're just not in the right place to make decisions. So this is the place to start. This is the place you want to be when you're starting your journey and starting to create a strategy for yourself. And this vision can be both personal and professional. And Patrick, the author actually points this out. Personal plus professional is really who you are. So you need to take both sides of that. And identify your values along with making them align to your long-term goals. So a question I have for you, and you can either answer them in the chat, turn on your mic and give feedback to any of these questions here, or just think about it yourself and maybe even write it down. I tend to look at things like this and make little notes to myself. So what do you want from life and what do you want your career to look like? And I don't know if the 5 to 10 years thing is really true anymore. I mean, I think sometimes in more like, what will I do between now and next year? I don't know about you. And also pursuing goals because they're mine. I think I have a lot more ownership over my own goals now than I did even when I was in my 40s or 30s. And then also, what are my non-negotiables? And I negotiate contracts for a living. And I must say, I'm very much understanding where my needs to haves, my wants and my needs versus my must haves. And I think that kind of clarity is also about knowing yourself and be honest with yourself. If you want to work a 4-day work week, don't talk to people who want you to work 6 days, a mistake I made in my past. So here are some data points to kind of go with, which is leaders are twice as effective at driving results, both in the business and personally, because they start with this strong self-awareness. And Jeff Bezos has a quote of saying he makes decisions based on what won't he regret when he's at 80. And I'm sort of in that mode too. Like, how do I use my years of free time, you could say, through a partial retirement, like a rolling retirement? How do I make those years meaningful? And then, finding things, and these are the little laughing emoji are like my funny little comments about this topic. I looked this up on AI, of course, to like, what would it equate to? It's training for a marathon when you hate running. I actually don't do marathons, but I do kind of long swims. And, if you hated swimming and you feel like you're drowning all the time, why make yourself miserable like that? So I'll stop here and then just say, any comments or thoughts about mastering yourself?
Well, Lizzie, my first question is what's the mastering? Like if if we are go with the only words, the phrase mastering is something different. If we are talking about mastering in specific field, that's a different. So if we are talking about mastering for the communication skills, your soft skill basically, rather than the technical skills, so that's a different.
Yeah.
Because
I feel like he's talking about mastering knowing yourself. So knowing, maybe you lean into really technical areas in your life, maybe. And if that's the case, would you want to be a leader? Because leaders have to have a lot more of those soft skills. Maybe the point of view is really about mastering the knowing of yourself means knowing where you want to lean in. Would that resonate with you?
yeah, then the mastering is about how you know about yourself, like your abilities and how to tackle the things, your communications and etc. Like that's we can go with, and more than 50% is your soft skills, and yes, somehow that your technical or professional skills is there. That we can so from my side, mastering is no about is I can't give you the percentage, but yes, because day by day as we go in our life, so we are get to know more the things. So from my side, I'm not the master in my life, well, for myself, because I really don't know, because sometimes I just face some situations which is I never faced. Sometimes it's happened to me the decisions during the professional life, what I need to take I never take before. So
Yeah.
it's I can't say for this, but
Well,
yes.
I like your point about seasons of life because it's true. In different seasons of life, I've had different goals, and it's knowing yourself and reflecting back, which we'll talk about later, to know that that's happening with you. So thank you for that. Anybody else have any other comments, or do we have any comments in the chat? Oh, I think that's Valerie. Go ahead, Valerie.
Well, I think I'm really enjoying these summary pointers you're giving. I feel it does really take a lot of self-awareness. It's so easy to think one can master oneself, but I tell you that there's a tendency to be extreme. You can either overestimate or underestimate certain things in every facet of life of yourself. So it looks like an easy topic, but personally, um, it is difficult to master knowing yourself. So, and I think it's something that, is a lifetime thing, but you will get better at it once you face that lady or man in the mirror. I think it's a very good thing to look into. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wonder if that's why there are so many self-help books. If you look on a shelf of any bookstore or go to Amazon and put in self-help, I think that's one of the more popular kinds of books because it is such a hard thing. You're absolutely right. Then I'll keep going just for the sake of time because I do have kind of a lot to cover from this book. It was a quite compelling book. The next part was mastering your ability to reason, which I think that's kind of a funny way of phrasing it, but really it's something that we just talked about a minute ago, right? Richard talked about the ability to have soft skills, and that's thinking critically, evaluating options, and good decision making, and all of that problem solving stuff that we do every day as project managers. So that kind of skill set is, I mean, this is not a book for project managers. Yeah, I think as project managers, we have more of that skill set than the average person because that's one of the things valued in project management. But these things that we also might do is try to actually create success by doing the things that PMI does, which is building models, which is not just a mental model for problem solving, but literal models for problem solving and gathering data and practicing anticipation of ripple effects. I mean, I think all of our risk management methodologies are ways to do that. And he really says all of these are about getting the ability to reason, mastering that skill set. So, I mean, in the book, it talks about, am I reacting emotionally or logically? And even as project managers, there's definitely things I react emotionally to, even on the job. And also, in my MBA program, I'm right now doing a part about deciding this hypothetical situation, right, where I've got to decide to build a plant in one of three locations. What's the best location to build the plant in? And that really is this whole A, B, or C, what's your option? What's your opportunity cost? All of that. So really trying to figure that out and also understanding, and I think also, Richa, you said this too, this issue about whose perspective or whose journey am I on? Am I on my journey or somebody else's? And realizing when you're talking about this ability to reason, people might say things like common sense, but it's not common to you because it's not your culture or it's not your place. That, you're coming from a different, maybe technical background, and they're talking about something with softer skills. All of these can be reasons why the perspective of ability to reason may not be shared. I even find that between generations and genders, that the ability to reason is perceived differently. So it's a very fuzzy idea in some ways. Anybody have any thoughts or other considerations?
As you said, when I was reading this, there was a lot that seemed to be related to project management in here, talking about options and things like business cases, for example. He talked quite well, I felt, on issues and looking for options for solving issues, for resolving issues, and the anticipation, the risk management. That bit really resonated.
Thank you. I like that. It's nice that you've also read the book, so you can corroborate some of my thinking here. But one of the things I liked about that was that this idea of Bezos again with regret minimization. So if you have two opportunities, it's sort of which one will I regret more? And he used that logic, he says, when he left his very cushy, very nice Wall Street job to open up this little shop online called Amazon, which of course didn't make money at first at all. So it's trying to figure out those pros and cons. And McKinsey says that data-driven companies are 23 times more likely to acquire customers. But I would say that also data-driven projects are generally much more likely to land the plane, you could say, not acquire customers, but do the thing you're meant to do, right? Would you agree with that? As a trainer, maybe you could say, Stephen, if you agree with that or not. Oh, yeah.
I'll just say, yeah, I think data is incredibly important. And a lot of the time we kind of do the first thing that comes into our heads rather than analyzing and thinking what's actually the best thing to do, what makes most sense, including things you mentioned opportunity costs just now. You know, that's basically what regret minimization is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, which of these decisions or which of these paths will I feel happiest with looking back? It's an important part of the question, I think, and using the data to help you make that decision makes life easier. Well, I think so anyway.
I think so too. And I think, Shavian, you wanted to say something, or you had a point?
No. I was just giving a thumbs up to what you guys said.
Thank you. Thanks for following along. The next one is mastering the right team. And I'm a big proponent on high performing teams and all the things you need to do in terms of making a high performing team. The thing that the author talks about is about surrounding yourself with people who complement your strengths. I think that's natural to project managers. If we're all UX people and no UI people, or we're all project managers and no one's there to do the actual work, we realize that that's going to be a blind spot. But also how you can invest in the development of people and also make the tough calls when people aren't in the right job, when you've got the wrong person, making that tough call that goes along with that, you know, is part of mastery of that ability. And here's some questions to ask yourself about: are the people on my team helping me grow or just agreeing with me? And do you have the right balance between visionary, operator, and executioner? I also think of these as thinkers and doers and planners. And Belbin skills, the people who invented this kind of mental concept of how people like to come to the table, you could say, really lean into this idea of different people have different models in their heads about not only how they want to participate, but how they process the information. Understanding if you have all those right complementary skills is important. And then the thing about when do you let go? I mean, that can include giving feedback to people, or getting someone the help they need if they're lacking a skill, and being honest with them about what that skill gap means to their job. I do a lot of mentoring, and a big part of that is being honest with people, being nice about it, but being honest. Anybody else have any feedback on this topic, mastering the right team? I think the idea that the AI gave me, this is from the AI, that the idea of Steve Jobs plus Wozniak, which was actually his technical guy, really made Apple what Apple is. A lot of people think Steve Jobs was Apple, but in fact, it really was the brilliance of his technical guy that made Apple what it was, along with a whole lot of other people at Apple. I lived from most of my life in the Bay Area, so I can say that with some assurance. I have a lot of Apple friends. The next point is about mastering strategy to scale. So having a strategy that can help your business grow, or help your work grow, or help your team grow is really what you're after. And because that is something that becomes sustainable. And then also, again, I think project managers are better at this than a lot of other kinds of managers, is looking for those documented processes, road mapping the way of working, finding the bottlenecks, adopting tools and technologies so that you can manage a better way of working. Even when your team grows from 10 people to 100 people, you've got that ability to scale because you've got the tools, technologies, policies, and people in place. And there's a lot of this thinking when he talks about intrapreneurs, which are people inside of a company, paid employees, but act like an entrepreneurial thinking, is those kind of people, solopreneurs sometimes called, can also be very much about me. So I am the great idea. I am the person bringing the thing. I find that project managers don't tend to do that because we understand it takes a village or it takes a team to make things happen. What do you think? Have you seen project managers with this kind of me first attitude or I'm the brains of the operation? And how has it affected projects you've worked on if that's the case?
Yeah. I think in the never so, because as a project manager, for me, it's just like you need to be very calm and open and flexible. You need to, if because you are working with the multiple pupils, and you need to work with them and equally. It's just not like individually you are working and you are the maker and you are the checker only. So somehow we need to be handle the things as per the requirement, and we need to be communicate as per the person, because every person have their, sometimes it's when we are talking about the male and female, so we are always saying we need to be very soft and generic when we are talking about, when we are talking with the female, and we can go with the harsh when we are talking with the male. So for me, just like whenever you talk either a male or female, you need to be very polite, because the situation you can handle that much politely, it can give you a better result, better than to go with the harsh. So if you want to like become a, not only the project manager in your personal or professional or any other professions, it's not about the technical, any professions, even in the teacher, if you are talking, we are talking about the as a teacher professions, uh, we need some calm, because when you have the calm, then you can able to solve the other problem, and you can work together with the team, otherwise not.
Absolutely. I think that that point's going to come up also a little bit later, you'll see. But that exact point of, I mean, the way I kind of think of it is survival of the fittest. We don't tend to see these kinds of project managers that are described here as maybe the negative side of things because they don't tend to be successful project managers. So to your point, agree. And also, who doesn't like working for a nice boss? I mean, I've worked for plenty of jerks. I'll tell you, you're always looking for a way out because you don't want to work for those kind of people. I absolutely agree. Any other thoughts while we look at this? So 70% of startups fail because they scale without systems. And this, I come from Silicon Valley, so I can say I've had so many friends who started great ideas, and some of them really succeeded. One was WebMD. I was there when they were building that. But there's a whole bunch more that nobody talks about because they failed miserably because they couldn't scale.
Uh, may I speak up again?
Yes, please.
Oh
Sorry.
yes.
One of the things that in this part of the book that spoke to me was really why we have project management plans. You know, this point about scaling up, you need to document the process so people know what to do. It's why we have a project management plan, isn't it? So everybody knows where to go to find the process. And it really kind of reiterated the importance of that for me. I thought that was really good.
I love that comment. And don't you feel like this is one of the things I say to people I mentor who aren't project managers, they're just doing something else. And I say project management isn't a career, it's a skill set because you can be the CEO and be great at project management. In other words, understanding the value in having plans and strategies and things, and then how you execute them, or a clerk. You don't have to be the boss. You could just be anybody and have your own plan, your own idea of what your work is and so forth. Do you agree with that?
For me, I think the PM's role is really about facilitation. It's enabling things to happen, isn't it? Making sure that everybody can connect and putting the right things in place for people. One of my projects that I look back on with a degree of fondness, I don't know why, because it was quite painful at the time, but I was able to spend my whole project kind of walking kind of 4 to 6 weeks ahead of the team, and it was like I was marching through the bush with a machete, just clearing the way, and the team were just able to do their job as a consequence, and they got on with it, and we succeeded incredibly. We took a very bad situation and it ended up being a very good situation, and I put a lot of it down to that, and sort of having things like processes so people know what to do, to me seems to be a good idea.
Excellent. Thank you. I
Sorry.
love that. And I like the fact that we can bounce each other off of each other because you've read the book as well. So thank you for that. It's a great voice to have on the call.
Liz?
Yeah.
There is a question in the chat,
Okay.
and it says, does the author talk about or explain how to define or work out a strategy, or just about how to scale, make sustainable once it has been defined?
He does talk about it. I didn't see a lot of models, but also I listened mostly to the book on Audible. So do you have a different view, Stephen? Or anything else to add of any kind to that question?
It's one thing I was slightly disappointed by in the book,
Hmm.
is that I didn't think that he talked about how to develop a strategy as much as he could have done. He did talk about realizing when your strategy was no longer effective and identifying the need to change the strategy, but I didn't feel that he talked about here's a way. There were some really good step-by-step things in there about bouncing ideas off people and doing things like role play, but they were more, how can I phrase this? They were more when you were trying to persuade or someone, or when you were trying to deal with a difficult situation and looking at different ways of dealing with it. But I'm not sure that he really went into this is a way to develop a strategy.
Yeah. I would suggest that this book was a little bit very, very helpful, but a little bit a hero story, a story about, even though he talks about don't be him first, but it was a little bit his story about how he reacted to the world around him versus how he plotted his course, because he talks about being a CEO for a successful business, but he doesn't share the process for getting to that exact strategy. I think that's it also, isn't it? Well, that's a good point. So let me think. If anybody knows of a book that does help on how to build a strategy, I would say put the link, share it in the chat so that others can see your ideas on other books which might help. I have a blog and free downloadable tools, and I talk about things like how to create a business case, how to create a project plan that will be vettable against a business case, things like that. So you can always check. I think there's a lot of good content online and on PMI to help you do that. But sadly, as already said by Stephen, this book may not be your cup of tea if you're looking for that particular answer. But that's what's good to know about having a book club, right? You can kind of find out if this book is really right for you if you want to dig into it more. Power plays, mastering power plays. And I sit here a lot in this season of my life, which is understanding the art of influencing and the art of negotiation, positioning yourself, creating leverage in conversations. This is, for me, kind of where I live when I'm doing my working job for a lot of what I do. And the positive side of that is really shaping great outcomes, creating opportunities. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. The downside, of course, is it can feel manipulative to you, to others. It can create a false narrative if you're not careful. And so there are some downsides. But I think this idea about understanding where your power is, I even called it my superpower, and really leaning into that can open a whole nother thing beyond project manager. I have this whole debate going on with my project management friends in Silicon Valley about what's a project manager there to do? And I think they're there to understand the business. Project managers should understand the business, negotiate what they need to do their project aligned with that business goal, and be able to speak to business leaders about how their project aligns to the business. And they say it's about cost and quality and delivery. So, everybody's in a different place too, also doing different projects. What do you guys think? Do you feel like this concept of power play and the kind of questions that the author says, hey, ask yourself, does this align with what you're doing right now, what you're focused on?
I think it's going to be ever more important potentially for the future of project management roles and careers with AI coming in, because yes, it's great to focus on quality the QTC triangle and the technical elements of what project management can do, but we're going to have so much or so many more tools available to help us with those things. It's going to really boil down to, in my opinion, the ability to influence and, as you said, understand the business and how to communicate, like you said, how the project relates to the business strategy. I think, yeah, that's going to be something that project managers are going to need to have as their baseline skill level.
So you're seeing that also. Yeah. Any other thoughts, different thoughts? Thanks, Jennifer, for that. So I think these are interesting questions to ask yourself. I do ask myself these questions, like, is how I'm currently perceived, or my understanding of how I'm currently perceived, aligned to how I want to be perceived? And am I a holder of influence? And if so, how can I expand that if I want to expand it? My husband is an introvert. I'm an extrovert. You know, we both have very different goals in our professional life. So it doesn't mean that you should always have to expand your influence. I really believe that, you know, you got to be happy where you live. And again, this 3 to 5 years, I don't even know. I couldn't make you a 5-year plan if my life depended on it. But what is your version of a long game? Just thinking about these things. Is it helping at all? Is it kind of piquing your interest? Do you feel like you have a plan for these different points being asked?
Not at the moment, but it's something I'm working on.
Me too. Sometimes I think about it a lot, and sometimes I don't even give it another thought. One thing about being on YouTube is you're much more confronted with how you're perceived by others. So the idea of really understanding, I think one of the things I really needed to understand anyway, was how the art of the deal, if I can put it like that, related to the success of my projects. So if I had a lot of assets that were needed, you know, hardware and software, or if I need a lot of subcontract assistance, that had a huge impact, not just on my budget and my quality, but also my ability to deliver what the client expected in the way the client expected it. And that goes back to the process thing that Stephen was talking about and the scalability of it. So as all of these pieces move on your project, you may have to constantly reassess the fact that your ability to master power plays or not, the ability to negotiate, get what you need, understand the economics, all of that, the opportunity cost that Stephen also talked about. All of this is part of your overall success. And I believe, certainly in my world, I was the lead partner at ABN AMRO for a while, at Shell for another while. So I kind of mixed industries, but the fact was the business expected me to understand how we would deliver to business expectations, not just to project charters. So that's why my journey resonates with this. I'll go on just for the sake of time, but please do chime in with your personal stories and reflections. It's all part of the great conversation we're having here. I really appreciate it. So one of the things, those are the 5 skills we've talked about. And then I thought, you know, kind of like Richa was talking about earlier, you've got your technical skills and your soft skills, or your business skills, you could say. And this book also kind of talks about those a couple of times. There's like an echo going through the book about these things. The ability to reflect, to decide, to trust. They're sometimes related to specific of the moves that were talked about, but also I felt they were just kind of general statements. So I wanted to go through that a little bit and talk about the breaking down of these individual pieces, which you could say, aren't they the same? They're kind of the same. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. But I like this idea of reflecting, because it's identifying your strengths and also the ecosystem you're currently in, because you might be the right kind of person, but are you in the right place? That's how I might put it. Also this issue about clarity of purpose, I really like this issue about, am I trying to swim upstream in a company that does not value what I'm doing? The speaker or the author talked about that, being in a company where he was pretty successful, but he was just not the right fit. And he quotes something I thought was really interesting from Alexander the Great. which was I'd rather face an army of lions led by sheep than sheep led by lions. And that was like a brain twister for me. And it really is understanding. Am I in a company where I want to be a lion, but I'm being led by a sheep? You know, that's the other way to think about it, I think. And so just knowing where you are and reflecting on that. I like this idea about, are you playing your game or someone else's game, being, you know, whatever you want to call it. And also, am I naming issues correctly? When I've been in my problem solving phase on projects, oftentimes, and this is an old consultant problem. I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers and IBM and some other companies like it. We would go right to solutioning before we were clear that we named the problem correctly. Has anybody else had that happen to them?
Many times it's happened with me.
Me too. We want to solve it right now, even if it's not the problem. Yeah. And also, I think we're better. Maybe we're better at solving the issue about, do I know how to fix it, or do I know someone who can? I think that is easier when you have a lot of people around you with different skill sets, so you can figure out who that person is. But I will also say sometimes I didn't always give oxygen to people who were quieter. So the person who said, I can fix it, I sometimes gave them the job to fix it, when in fact the guy who was quiet in the corner was really the right guy to fix it. So it's also back to that teaming thing, right? Reflection about, do I really understand who my team members are? And the loudest person in the room isn't the right one always. And in fact, maybe always.
Can I just leap in? And I think what
Yeah,
you just
please do.
takes us back to the business we were talking about earlier with options. You know, if one person leaps up and says, I can fix it, that's just one option, isn't it? And if you can get options from the other people in the room, the quiet person you mentioned, you might, oh yeah, that one makes a lot more sense. Sorry, I'll shut up there.
That's really, it's not just, it's almost like giving yourself time to assess the issue correctly, but it's also, what you're saying is give yourself the time to assess your options. And I think that's a great lesson learned for me. I'm actually gonna write that down.
I thought that was one point that he made very well in the book, actually. You know, when you're suddenly faced with something, stand back and kind of reflect on it so that you can understand what's really at stake here. And the point, he made a really good recurring point as well, which was don't react emotionally. You know, so take the time to reflect so that you can react kind of rationally rather than emotionally.
Yeah, and he gave even personal life experiences with that, where he said, I did the wrong thing. I reacted emotionally when I shouldn't have. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've all been there, right? So what do you feel that you can reflect on? Your goals, your impact, yourself? Again, the reflection is bigger than just one particular move. So think about what thing you might want to reflect on as a takeaway. And if you want to put a scale of 1 to 10 on how well do you think you reflect, you can also share that in the chat, or share it by just starting to talk. I'll wait for a minute to see if we get any feedback. The other big pillar he talks about, in my view, is decide, which is knowing how to decide and also building the systems to do it. We talked about systems before, and this was a component of the system sort of discussion, at least at part. But I like how he helps this. It's not just being able to decide, but building the systems to do that. I like how it helps you to prevent decision fatigue. And I think on projects, that's one of the biggest issues that come up, is just decision fatigue. I mean, if you've remodeled a house or built a house or done anything like that personally, also you'll know at some point you're just like, I can't pick another wall color. I can't pick another piece of hardware for my, windows or something. And that happens in life, and it happens at work too. And also when under pressure, if you have a model you go through, at least for me, I realized I won't skip steps so easily. I won't try to rush that process of deciding, like we talked about options and understanding things, because we have a process. We go through these 10 questions and need data on them before we can decide. Have you had an example of that where you use some kind of framework to help you make decisions or deal with issues coming up constantly on projects? And has it worked for you?
Liz, Jennifer is replying. The reflection point is treating issues like a game or puzzle to be solved and time taken to review options, not just the first one that comes into play. And not making panic decisions, embarrassing the opportunity and the situation rather than the panic.
Yeah. Spoken like a true project manager. It resonates with me. Absolutely. Yeah, because I've been on projects where we panicked, where basically, I don't know if you've seen some of these movies, it's like the kid is going, ah, those moments happen on my project sometimes. So yeah, this really is a model that we all know, but sometimes when life gets tough, somehow it goes out the window. So I think my lesson learned is sticking to the model you've created and not letting it lapse when the panic arises or when the pressure comes is one of the things as a project manager I need to continue to work on. Other thoughts and feedback? Oh, I talked about that already. And so do you feel you're able to decide effectively, efficiently, quickly, or not quickly, as the case may be, as we just talked about in the comments from Jennifer? Do you feel like you've got a moment here when you want to take that on board and try to fix the process of deciding things? I tend to be kind of ad hoc as a human being. Like, yeah, I'll just go into this MBA program. And now I'm suffering from it. But I don't know. Are you laissez-faire or spur of the moment? I mean, what's your model in life that you're following?
For me, in case of decision, the three of this effectively, efficiently, and quickly work together because it's depend upon situation to situation. Sometimes there's a situation I need to take the quick decision. I don't have time to think about it. In the personal and the professional life both, sometimes it's efficiently when you require sufficient time, you need to analyze pro, cons, everything. And the effectively is just like you need to not only think about yourself, you need to be think about others also. So it's totally depend upon situation to situations. Steve is saying how quickly our decision is needed is an important ask to question. A question to ask, I think. That's nice.
I think so. Yeah, I agree very much. Anyone else have any other feedback or thoughts?
No, Liz, I was going to say I'm similar to you in terms of that kind of like you put on one of the slides, winging it. Like, what process do you follow? I know I'll get it done and it'll be done perfectly, but I'll just wing it, process, what's process? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we got that in common, that's for sure. One of the things I think we're all can agree on is trust is critical to any kind of teaming, and most project managers in some form are teaming with others. So trust is almost like a shorthand for like, what does trust mean to you? What does it mean in the culture you're in? What does it mean to the other cultures you're working with? I find that is a variable based on lots of things, but the real baseline of what's trust, I think, is all humans have this common shared sense of justice and the ability to say something without having to come back and slap you in the face, all of those kind of things. And the ability to say what you're going to do and then do it. I mean, that is a golden skill set to have for me as a project manager or just even a human being.
There's a comment from Valerie. It says, I think honing in on critical reasoning skills I'm getting up alerts, will really help to effectively decide in any and all situation. It is easier said than done to be calm in crisis.
Yeah, that's my experience too. Thank you for sharing that, Valerie. So in terms of trust, you could say these might be questions you'd ask, or maybe there are other questions to ask, which is, do I let my team go enough? So basically follow their own path. do they trust me? Because trust is mutual, right? If you say I'm going to do something and you don't, your team, you won't. What do they say? Trust takes years to get and minutes to lose. So how are you behaving to create trust in your team? And also, is lack of trust something that slows you down? I've certainly seen that on projects I've worked on where maybe the client didn't trust us as consultants, or maybe we didn't trust our third party support. And that can be devastating. It's about intentions versus actions, right? In some cultures, in American anyway, we often confuse intentions with actions. And so we say, well, I would have done the right thing if you'd allowed me to, but you didn't present the ability to do it. And so that can also lead to almost like a miscommunication that leads to lack of trust. There actually is trust, but somehow miscommunication has made it worse. So I'm just thinking about, what's slowing us down when there's lack of trust. Any thoughts or comparisons there? Maybe more from the book, Stephen, if you have that.
It was interesting what he kind of talked about. I thought in the book he talked about 4 levels of trust with people. I think I'm trying to remember them. I think the first one he talked about was somebody who was a stranger. To what degree do you trust a stranger?
Yeah.
And so when you first engage with people, reminding yourself not to be too trusting. I can't. I know that the top one he referred to as running mate, actively somebody that I guess you're partnering. I can't remember the other two.
Yeah, and he also used a word. I kind of glossed over this one thing. He used a word it's like mobster word. It's like Saliago, like your right hand man. Think of the that is it. He also talked about that level. So yes, I when he talked about the mob, I kind of left that part because that was a bit weird to me. But the concept of I like that you bring that up, because it's true. When we're building a team or we're working with third parties, we need to know sort of how much to trust. So it might be something to start with to say, how much can I trust you so far based on past experience and other information? And what I work on my world is the basis of our contract. Good contracts make good relationships, in my humble opinion. So if I see a contract that looks a bit dodgy or written all for them and not at all for us, then I'm more distrustful. I'm checking and verifying a lot more. And so absolutely, really good point. Thank you for bringing that out.
If you will forgive me, I found the 4 levels that he talks about. So as I mentioned, stranger. The second one, he uses the term endorsed, as in you've been introduced to somebody and somebody else has recommended them, and that's given you a slightly higher level of trust in them. The third one he calls trusted, because you've got experience of working with them, and therefore you understand to what extent you can or can't trust. And then that last one was running mate.
Thank you for summarizing that beautifully. Thank you. And does that resonate with people? I think generally, yes, it does. Those 4 kind of make sense to me. Do they to you as well?
I think yes.
Yeah, I would say so too. So if we took those 4 models, what are you to your ecosystem? Are you that running mate, or are you that stranger? And I think it's kind of good to have that perception so that hey, this person doesn't know me. He has no track record. So how do I prove myself? How do I add trust to the conversation without having years of relationship yet? And having also the point of view that their questions may be sounding insulting, but they're actually just trying to vet the situation because they don't know you and they don't know the situation, or they don't know all the facts about, are you who you say you are? And so I think from my perspective, this issue of trust is beginning to understand the other person's point of view as well.
Please, we have some feedbacks. From our first feedback from the Worley, she's saying, I think honing in on critical reasoning skills will really help to effectively decide in any and all situations. It is easier said than don't be calm in crisis.
Good point. Don't be calm
And
in crisis.
yeah, to be calm in crisis. Easier to sit.
Yeah.
And Chavi is saying stranger and draws, trusted and running mate.
Thank you. Great feedback.
Wondered if I
Another
could
model he
ask a
talks about, this
question.
is the second to the last one, is anticipate. The idea of looking ahead. This is something also I feel like I've
Sorry,
needed
Liz.
work.
I think Jennifer was about to say something.
Oh, Jennifer, my apologies. Thank you, Stephen. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, it was a question to the group on trust and how would you accelerate building trust with a new client or a new supplier? I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts.
I'll chime in while we're waiting for other people because I have an easy answer to that. I work with a lot of suppliers around the world for technology that I buy on behalf of NGOs. And one of the things we have is a governance model. It tells you right away how we work with our suppliers, what they can expect from us, what we expect from them. And in fact, in my blog, I've written this whole thing on supplier governance. One of the things it feels like I see from them is a deep sigh of relief because they feel like you're saying what you do and you prove because you've been doing this model for 5 years that you're doing it with other suppliers. So I assume you're going to do it with me as well. And just creating that transparency seems to be a way of gaining trust when the two parties don't know each other. Other ideas?
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I had a situation once where I had a client. I took over the management of a contract with a client that hated us, and there was no trust at all in either direction. And one of the things that I did was I went to see the client and I sat down and I said, look, I want an hour of your time. And I sat down and I went through everything that we were doing for that client and gave a warts and all picture. You know, this I'm comfortable, this is working well, this isn't. So it was basically a whole host of different projects. And this one isn't doing well, this one I think is likely to fail, this is why. And at the end of the hour, the client said to me, why has nobody told me this before? And I said, I don't know, but I'm telling you now, and I'm going to carry on telling you. And the relationship I had with him, because it was a bloke, from then on was just fantastic. And he even, when I decided to leave the company I was working for, he contacted me and he said, do you need a reference?
Oh,
which I thought was wonderful.
yeah, that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
Amazing how just being honest and transparent about where you were and what you were doing for him, and including the stuff that's not working. What a game changer that was. I think they're just, you know, when the relationship's broken, honesty goes a long way, right?
Thank you for sharing both. That's really useful.
I love that. Thank you so much. And that was a great question. Thanks for asking. I'm going to go on to negotiate due to time. So obviously, negotiating is the art of creating win-win for the most part, but it's also about protecting your interests. And because I work on a lot of contracts where a contract that comes from a supplier is going to protect the supplier, you have to add wording to protect you. That's the world I live in. And so really looking at how we can gain the trust by putting in two sides of the equation is a big part of that. And I, again, just wrote a whole thing about best alternative and the zone of agreement and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, I can send you more details. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. But it's really about what do you want and what are you willing to give up for it? That's kind of how I always talked about it all these years, which is for me the nuts and bolts of negotiation. And also, you know, what can I share and what do I need to hold back? Because the fact is, in negotiation, even if I trust you, it's not appropriate to share fully in all cases. That's the issue about corporate negotiation anyway. And so I really liked this book because it has a simple mind frame, at least for me. My main takeaway is trying to get to this sort of salient points. And that's really about understanding who you are now, who you want to be in the future, how you want to get there, and what kind of a person are you? And that is, what are your goals? Are you trying to be this internal employee, which I was for most of my life, doing well and moving up the ladder and doing different things? Or do you want to be that person who's out there and trying new things, which is kind of my life now, doing all different kinds of things to find out where my real purpose is? I don't know. Where do you guys think you are in your trajectory of this? Do you feel like this is a good summary, Stephen, of the book in terms of a meta view? Would you have something to add?
Right. First thing, yes, I think it's a good summary. Do I have anything to add? I'm not sure I do. It was an interesting book to read. I think one of my major impressions is this guy is definitely a salesman.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of useful stuff in there, that you could pick up, and for me, I think that the beginning of it, know who you are and what you want, was a really important part of it. It's something that I've always struggled with, who am I and what do I want? And it's kind of only later on that I've kind of finally figured things out, pretty much when it's too late. But he does offer that set of 25 questions, that, what's he call it, personal audit?
Yeah.
Personal identity audit or something to help you figure that I must admit, I only finished reading the book about 10 o'clock this morning, so I haven't been through that bit yet.
Yeah, and I listened to the book while I was in Japan, so it's not all right on the top of my head anymore, but I did like that audit. That was one of the models, to the point about, are there any models for different things? That was a model that was very concrete.
Yes.
Excellent. And so my question about your takeaway is it about your personal vision, your influence and impact, or something else? If you have an idea, you can say it or leave it in the chat, or just write it down for yourself, so that hopefully you got something out of today and you found it useful to hear the conversation, take part in the conversation. I found the conversation the most interesting part of this conversation today. And I'd actually like to ask, is it okay, Stephen, if we include your comments, because you really augmented a lot of the book review today? And actually, if everyone's okay, since we only used your first names, we could not show your picture, but just let your voice come through. Would that be all right? Jennifer, Stephen, Valerie?
Fine
Okay?
by me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Thank you. We won't show your face, but we will let your voice come through, because you had a lot of great feedback today. I'll tell the person who's going to edit that we'd like to do it that way. So the book club is run by Women in Projects Network. It's not related necessarily to a gender-based thing. We've really tried to make it agnostic, but we do also run webinars 4 times a year that always start with International Women's Day, and we'll be running through the end of the year. Well, our last event will be on November. We're going to have a great talk from a person from India. I can't see it right now. And I just want to make a comment also about the book club. The book club is, the next book club is the 22nd of October. So do look for that.